cycle. Here's the audio from George Kliavkoff at Pac-12 Media Days today.
Before I finish my remarks, let me provide you with an update on our media rights negotiation and our approach to considering expansion. I know there's been never-ending speculation about the timing of our media deals, but in the end, we're on track to announce our deals at about the same time as everyone would have anticipated and predicted before the news of conference realignment. The Pac-12 Board of Directors has met regularly throughout the process and has been united in their commitment to one another and to the Pac-12. And this commitment and patience will be rewarded with an announcement in the near future. Getting the right deal has always been more important to our board and to the conference than getting the expeditious one. Regarding potential expansion, while we have already done the due diligence on expansion candidates many months ago and significantly narrowed our focus to a handful of schools, our sequence remains unchanged. First, we will conclude our media rights deals. Then our schools will sign our grant of rights, which has already been negotiated, and only then will we decide on potential expansion. In a moment, I'll invite Mark Harlan and Merton Hanks to join me on stage, specifically for questions focused on Pac-12 football. But first, I'll be happy to take and answer your questions related to topics other than football.
Brandon Marcello, 24/7 Sports. George, when it comes to this, the storyline with the media rights deals, I was wondering, is there a breakdown in communication? And I ask that because you've had presidents and other administrators since February saying, the deal's coming soon, wait, it's going to be a couple of weeks. What's been the holdup there, and has there been a breakdown in communication between the conference office and its membership?
Several dozen board meetings in the last year. We constantly update our board. I think they're enthusiastic like I am about the media deal. But I will tell you what we've seen is that the longer we wait for the media deal, the better our options get. And I think our board realizes that. And there's an underlying shift in the media market that's happening, and we're long-term taking advantage of that, but short-term, it may have provided some hiccups.
Kenneth Berry, Touchdowns and Tangents. In regards to, obviously, the Big 12, they talked about last year, and even this year, they're open for business. In terms of them potentially poaching schools, is that still a major concern, or has it kind of been nipped in the bud privately?
It's not a concern. Our schools are committed to each other and to the Pac-12. We'll get our media rights deal done. We'll announce the deal. I think the realignment that's going on in college athletics will come to an end for this cycle. And then the truth is we've got bigger fish to fry. There are incredible opportunities and also challenges in front of college athletics. And I need to be able to work with all of my colleagues in Division I and particularly in the A5. And we'll do that. And we'll move past, kind of all the bitter squabbling of the last year, and we'll work together to make college athletics better.
Kirk Kenny from the San Diego Union Tribune. For months and months, San Diego State carried a belief that a Pac-12 invitation was imminent. Did the Pac-12 lead San Diego State to believe that an invite was forthcoming, or do you think they made assumptions that they shouldn't have?
Well, I'm not going to disclose my conversations with any potential expansion candidates, but I will tell you that, generally speaking, we've never given anyone an indication that anything would be different than the sequence that I just mentioned, which is get our media rights deal done, get our grant of rights signed, and then we'll consider expansion.
George, there's been this narrative now for several months that your league is about to collapse and go away. Why do you think that is?
Well, I sit in the board meetings and I see the commitment that all of our schools have to each other, and I also kind of know where the sources of that is coming from. So I discount that because I know the truth.
James Creppier from the Oregonian. George, I think 2 years ago I asked you about potential expansion candidates and that AAU had been a requisite. The lead candidates that have been well reported over the last year are not AAU members. Is the door open with expansion to not just those who've been reported, but what does the implications of that mean to other schools in the geographic region who have had great athletic success but are not AAU members?
I think we talked 2 years ago. We also talked last year about all of the criteria that we put in when we consider expansion candidates, and we rate all of the potential expansion candidates against all of those criteria. Academic progress, Research 2 standing, AAU is a part of that in one component, but not the only component.
Following up on Ross's question, George, you mentioned the patience of the presidents and chancellors, but obviously the fans also have had to wait a year now, wondering, is our league going to survive, or are our schools going to be able to make enough money? Some of the presidents have come out and made comments, but this is your first time speaking about it since December. Why have you chosen not to address this publicly sooner, to give some sort of reassurance?
Yeah, I could have spent all of the last year getting into a he said on, every single rumor that's been passed about our conference. We decided to take the high road. We decided to focus on the future of the conference. That's why we haven't engaged. And what I will tell you is that when you think about, the effect that might have on our schools of not being in the public every day, talking and defending ourselves, for me, the real concern was, is it going to affect our recruiting, right? Are we going to lose potential student athletes because of that, because of some uncertainty? And I will tell you that our recruiting has never been stronger, and it kind of reinforced the decision to not engage in that and to stay with the high road.
Richard Johnson, Sports Illustrated, in the back left. Over here, George. Hi. Is it at all frustrating for you personally or professionally that despite what you're trying to push, the football, the quarterbacks, that you're still dealing with questions about media rights timeline and stuff like that in the midst of all that?
I don't consider it frustrating. It's a reinforcement for me of what dedicated and passionate fans we have and how much people care about college athletics. And I get it. And at the same time, I don't want the opportunity to be missed today to talk about football. We're not announcing a media deal on purpose today because I want the focus to be on football.
George, just to follow on what you just said, I think a response ago, because it caught a lot of people's attention very quickly. You just said you're not announcing a deal today on purpose because you want the attention to be on football.
Yep.
To be clear, that would imply that the deal is done and codified and just you're waiting until after today.
I think you're reading too much into that.
So then what is the purpose behind not announcing something, which is what you just said?
We want to have the focus on football today. We have an incredibly good football story to tell, and we want that to be the focus today.
That was he just Krepia threw a grenade at him, and instead of throwing it back, he just held on to it. And that last question was everything else, was, look, we're not going to expand until we have the media deal. The media deal's not done yet. San Diego State, clearly, kind of freelanced on their own. And then it came to it, because he said it a couple times, we're not going to announce the media deal. When he was asked specifically, so you have one, but you're not going to because today's about football, was you're reading too much into that. And then, well, why wouldn't you? And he said, today's about football. He stepped in it there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a landmine that he's not going to recover from. No. But, yeah, it was kind of a misplay. And not kind of, it was a misplay. And I don't know how, once they got behind the curtain, they talked about that and said, like, well, yeah, probably should have said it this way, or how he would have corrected it and said it otherwise. But, yeah, that was a little bit of a confusing moment. And kudos to the reporters there that, seized the opportunity to follow up and get some clarity while they were able to. And, I'm as confused as ever on what exactly to expect, whether it comes to expansion or their TV deal or any of that stuff. The only thing that seems to still make the most sense is they all stick together, despite what others have tried to, claim for a while was going to happen. There's been various times where name and Alice, talked about the nervous Nellies and like, is this going to fall apart? Or at least there's been like a teasing of, it's all going to fall apart. And like, yet here they are. They're still here. They're still together. They're still talking about being unified, and they're still waiting on a TV deal. So again, I think it's, a situation where you definitely see some cracks in the armor, but there is enough foundation that's still in place that, this thing could still, move on along as is or with an addition or two and be okay and be, just the way that it has been, minus obviously the LA schools after this year, much the way the Big 12 is going to be the same way they are, with the exception of, This year for them, 4 new schools, and then the 2 that will eventually be outgoing. So I think the Pac's still on track to, be the Pac in some form or fashion. But certainly, as I've mentioned multiple times now, if you want to take what he said differently, then by all means, you're free to do that, and I wouldn't blame you for doing that. I just didn't hear. I heard more in there to be like just stay pat on, as opposed to hearing enough there to go like, oh my gosh, they are totally screwed. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think. I think the what I take away from this is he did not do a good job with this today.
No, I don't think he did a good job.
He didn't do a good job. No. And I mean, this was I'll pat myself on the back for my prediction of God help him if he doesn't have a media deal to talk about, because again, that is something that's unfortunate for them, because like you said, Craig, that's when you talk about it, is media days.
Yeah, that was the stupidest thing he said.
Deal. And like, oh, we want this to be about football. Well,
because here's the thing: they're going to ask Caleb Williams about the TV deal.
No,
what's he going to say? He doesn't care. He's not even going to be in the league. He doesn't care about this. So
even Bo Nix, whose team will be in the league, presumably in the next TV deal, Bo Nix doesn't care either.
Yeah, that was a lame excuse for not announcing it, to say that they wanted to keep the focus on the storylines. I mean, there's plenty of time for that still. There's still another month to go into the season. There's this whole rest of the day. If you had simply given the media details, then guess what? All the reporters would have taken it. They would have gone to Twitter, they would have written their articles, and they would have gone on their radio shows, and they would have talked about it. And in between, they would have had Caleb Williams come to the table, or Bo Nix, or whoever, and they would have talked to them about things that have nothing to do with the media deal, and all of it would have been covered. So to hear, no, we just didn't put out there, we didn't want to distract. Nobody was going to be wholly distracted by that unless the deal sucked. And then people would have been like, I don't even know if I want to talk to the Oregon running back. I'd rather talk about this crappy deal that's apparently in the works. Now, maybe that would have been a distraction. Maybe if it was so great that it just surpassed all expectations, including probably their own, then, maybe that would have been a distraction because it's just so great we've got to talk about. I don't know. But yeah, that didn't make much sense at all to say that they didn't announce it because they didn't want to take away attention. But then, no, there's nothing to announce necessarily. That was a little bit of a stub in your toe moment for sure.
Yep. All right. Next.